Okay, now we're going to take the sine and cosine graphs and move them left, right, up, and down. Our horizontal changes will always come from C over B. So it's always the opposite of this number divided by B. Our vertical changes happen with D. Okay. Now, let's start with this one. Cosine's the exact same way. So let's start with this one. First, identify this is old news. Our amplitude is 1/2. So I know my high point goes to 1/2. So I'm going to label this 1 so that this is 1/2. High point goes to 1/2, low point goes to -1/2. My B is equal to 1, so my period is 2 pi. My C is pi over 3. It's the opposite of what's in that parentheses. General formula has minus C, so when we take it out, we have a positive pi over 3. To get my horizontal translation, I need to divide that by B, but in this case B is 1, so no changes, and my D is equal to 0. Okay, it's a sine graph, so I know my general shape, it's going to look like this. So let's put our starting and ending points. I know it starts at 0. My period is 2 pi, so I'm going to label this 2 pi, put my ending point. It also crosses in the middle. I've got to put my high point at 1/2, my low point at -1/2. So far I've applied the changes that A and B provided. So the amplitude and period, that's old news. C is my pi over 3. That's going to move my graph to the right because C is positive. All my points are going to move right 1/3 pi. So I've got my graph labeled, this would be in fourths. Now, I'm going to relabel this. If you don't want to relabel it on your paper, that's fine. But I'm going to relabel it so all my points, all my tick marks on my graph are in thirds. Okay, so that's going to be 1/3 pi, 2/3 pi, pi. 1 1/3, 1 2/3, 2 pi. Okay, same points as before, beginning, end, and middle at 0. High points are halfway in between, low points are halfway in between. Now I'm going to apply my C and D. In this case, I only have a C. All my points are going to be moved right, pi over 3. So in my case, that's why I relabeled the graph, that everything is getting moved over 1 tick mark. So now I have dots here, here. It's going to be the exact same shape, just shift it over. Okay, let's do a cosine graph now. First, let's identify what we know. We know that my amplitude is 3. I know that it's flipped over. I know that B is 2 pi, the number with x. So period is 2 pi over B, so my period is 1. I know that C is -4 pi. To get my horizontal translation, I take -4 pi and divide it by B. So now that gives me -2. So that's going to be moving it left 2 units. And again, I don't have a D, so I'm not going up or down. So first let's start with applying A and B. Let's get the graph set up. I know that my period is 1, which is a little different, so my x-axis is not going to be labeled in pi, just integers. I'm going to have to move it 2, so I'm going to have room to move. So let's label these 2 tick marks as 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4. same on the y-axis. Okay, cosine has the general shape of the bowl, but if it's flipped over, it's going to look like this. So, not drawing the graph, but putting my beginning dots. Amplitude of 3 means I need to start at -3, end at -3, and period is 1, high point is 3, crossing halfway. So this graph so far is not very spaced out, but you can get that it's generally going to be doing this. Up and down and up and down. I made it dotted because we haven't applied the last change. -2 left. So all my dots are going to be moved 2 units left. So what I'm going to do is extend my pattern that I was drawing so I have more tick marks to move. So now this one's going to go off the graph. This one is going to go barely on the graph. Here's some more that are going to be on the graph. It gets messy. You're welcome to use colored pencils when you're doing this. It does help. And then trick to find all the points that you need to graph. So now this graph is having a y-intercept of -3. It actually stayed in the same spot. Okay, you try picking out your a, b, c, d and graphing the sine function. I know my a is 2, my b is 1, which means my period is 2 pi. My c is pi over 2, always opposite. Divided by b is still going to be pi over 2, so I'm moving right pi over 2. The period and your shift is a good indicator of what you need to label your x-axis. In this case, I'm going to label it even smaller into quarter pies. So here's pi and 2 pi. It's a sine function, so I know the general shape is this. So I've got my 3 dots along the middle. High points, amplitude is 2, so up to 2 and down to -2. Now I'm going to move my dots. In this case, 2 tick marks. So this dot goes over here. I'll try to make it a little cleaner this time. And draw my graph in. If you do continue your graph like I did right here, make sure you do it accurately. Don't just sketch in a crazy line. You don't have to connect it unless it specifies, but don't extend it wrong. Okay, you try another one, pick out A, B, C, D, graph it, check back. So this one, my A is 1/2. It's flipped. My B is pi, so that makes my period 2. My C is -pi. Remember, it's always opposite. And -pi divided by pi to do my C over B is going to give me -1. So that means I'm moving left. And this one I still don't have a D. Okay, so period is 2, so I'm counting by ones. Room to move left 1. And I'm going to put 1, 2. Amplitude is 1/2, so I'm going to label this 1/2. It's a sine function, so I know it's going to look like this, but it's flipped over. So it's going to go down first. Still has the same middle dots. High points at, oh, gotta flip it over. So down to negative 1/2, up to 1/2. So there's my graph. Now I shift it. If I gotta move them all left 1, this is now gonna be my starting point. 1 is 4 tick marks. And I'm going to need to continue that because just this much of the graph is not very much. Let's see, I would be here and here, just like that. So we took a negative sine graph, shifted it, turned it into a regular sine graph. Okay, let's move a cosine graph around. So our A is 3. Our b is 2, which means our period is 2 pi over b, so that'd be pi. I don't have a c, so I don't have any horizontal movement, but I do have a d, so I know I'm moving my whole graph up 2. But I start with the same thing, my amplitude and my period. If I've got to go to pi, I'm going to label this pi, so this is pi over 2. And it's a cosine graph, so it's going to look like the bowl. Start at the top, which is going to be 3. I'm going to hit my bottom halfway, and then back up at the top, cross the x-axis in between, and here we go with the bowl. That's not the final graph. The final graph says move up 2. So I'm going to take all these points and shift them up 2. And these kind of went off the graph. So the red is my final graph. Okay, try sketching a cosine graph by yourself. Pick out that A is 2, B is 1, which means the period is 2 pi. D is negative 5, which means I'm going down 5. Okay, down 5 is far, so let's see if I can move this. I can extend this further. Okay. Cosine. It's going to look like a bowl. So let's label this 2 pi, pi. Start at my high point, which is 2. Negative 2, back to 2, halfways are in the middle. So there's my amplitude and period. Then I need to apply my shift. I need to move all these down 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now's my new, there's my new high point. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're estimating now because we've gone off the graph. And one more. So my cosine graph is now way down here. Okay, let's put some changes together. Amplitude is 1. B, number with x, 2 pi. 2 pi divided by b gives me my period. My period is 1. C is going to be pi over 2, so I'm going right. D is 1, I'm going up. Cosine graph is a bowl, so I start at the top. I'm going to put 1. How far do I need to go out? My period is 1. So let's label this 1. We can put 2 periods on here. Okay, my ending point's got to be up high, low point in the middle, crossing in the middles. Okay, there's applying amplitude and period. Now if I shift this one's not going to be exact because pi divided by 2 is 1.57, so roughly 1.5 right. So if that's 1, I've got a ways to move these dots. So it's roughly going to be right here, and they're all getting moved that far. they're also getting moved up 1. So I'm moving them over 6 tick marks and up 1. You see the graph start to take. So here it is so far. If I wanted to continue this the other direction, just follow the pattern, keep it symmetrical. Where would this one be? On the x-axis and then crossing right at 1. Sometimes going back towards the y-axis is easier than extending my graph out to the right. Okay, let's write the equation from here. It's a cosine function, so I'm looking for a bowl. You can look for a flipped over bowl if you want. We need to be able to see an entire period. For an upright bowl, I do not see an entire period, so now I'm going to look for an upside down bowl, and I do see one. It starts from here, goes to here. So how long is that? That's going to be 2 pi, so that's my period. My amplitude, my high up and down, is 1. Is it shifted? Yes, it is shifted left pi over 4. So that makes my C negative pi over 4. Is it shifted up or down? No, so D is still 0. Okay, period equals 2 pi over B. So in this case, B has to be 1. When I put C in parentheses, let's go ahead and start writing this out. Y equals cosine. It's going to be a negative cosine because it is flipped over. Parentheses, bx, 1x. Since I went left, it's a negative pi over 4, but subtracting a negative turns it into a positive pi over 4, and plus 0. Now you can leave out the understood 1 and the 0 are just fine. I'm just showing them for placeholders. Okay, let's write the equation of the sine function. First of all, what are we looking for? A complete sine period. There's different equations you could write for this one. Here's one I see. Okay, I think that's supposed to cross there. Okay, so right off the bat, this graph is shifted up 2. My amplitude, how high and low do I go from this middle line? 2. So my amplitude is 2. Period, how long does it take for this graph to repeat? Is pi. Remember that's 2 pi over b, so in this case b has to equal 2. And it's not shifted left or right for the one we picked out, so 0. Okay, so y equals a, which should be 2, sine, parentheses, bx, 2x. There was no shift, or horizontal shift, so close. It did go up 2, so plus 2. Okay, you try to find this sine function and write the equation. Okay, I'm looking for a sine function. I'm looking for this. I think I see one starting here and ending here. So it's definitely moved down 3, so D equals negative 3. C is going to equal 0 because I didn't move left or right for this one. Amplitude. How high did I go up and down from the center? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And period. How long did it take to repeat? It took pi, and that is 2 pi over b, so b equals 2. Okay, the equation. Y equals a times sine, so 5 sine, bx, wasn't anything added on, and we went down 3.